Ever meet someone really intelligent who knows so much about so many different things, but then lacks any ability to apply any of that knowledge in any meaningful way to the real world? Well, in college, we called those people professors. And at BMW, they were called Project I, which was a think tank of people armed with big brains and expensive consultants to design the car of the future. Project I's car of the future came in two forms: a pug-like urban transport pod called the i3 and a mid-engine sports car, the i8. In my estimation, the BMW i8 is one of the best-looking cars of the 2010s. It has exotic mid-engine proportions, butterfly doors, and exquisite surface detailing that was new and different and yet still somehow subtle and elegant. Its rear end, however, had one very strange design cue. It looks like it's in the middle of defecating out a Porsche 911. The i3 is similarly crowning. Ew, it's just not far enough out yet. I can't tell what it is. I'm so sorry if you've never noticed this before, because now you're never going to be able to unsee this. However, I will distract you with the genuinely interesting story of the BMW i brand. If you drive your cars on the road, it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when something will happen. Hagerty's guaranteed value insurance lets you agree on your classic car's value before something happens, not when it's already too late. So your car can get back out on the road where it belongs. Get a free quote at jasonsentme.com. Project I marked the beginning of the end for BMW's reign as the most enviable car company in the world. As such, this is a cautionary tale about what happens when executives lean on academics more than car experts. The man responsible for the trajectory change is Norbert Reithofer, not a car guy, but a production engineer whose cost savings efforts led to him becoming CEO of BMW in 2006, right when it was on top of the automotive world. A year into his tenure, Reithofer decided that BMW needed to rethink everything that had gotten it to where it was, to throw away all conventions and start anew with a clean sheet of paper. Reithofer formed a group that named itself Team I. I standing for intelligent, innovative, and international. It would spend some $2 billion to come up with a sustainable mobility solution for the future. To them, the future was all about the city. And here's why. 200 years ago, just 3% of the world's population lived in cities. In 2007, that number hit 50%. And by 2050, it's predicted that 2/3 of the world's population will live in cities. And not only in regular cities, but also in mega cities, a United Nations term for a metropolis with more than 10 million inhabitants. These are often economic powerhouses that make a disproportionate contribution to their country's GDP. In other words, these are the kind of rich people who consultants love. And BMW would be there. Not as a car company. No. They made it very clear to us at the time. BMW was no longer a car company. BMW was a mobility provider. The I plan included a network of BMW-owned parking garages. BMW operated electricity suppliers. BMW created apps to coordinate your journey with public transportation. Oh, and that thing. Silly me, almost forgot about the car. The car would be intelligent, sustainable, lightweight, forward-thinking, and it would be good for planet Earth. It was known as the MCV, the Mega City Vehicle. Badged the BMW i3 when it went on sale in 2014, the Megacity vehicle truly was a revolutionary car. Not just because it was electric, though at the time being electric alone would have been enough to make this a truly special car. But of course it was electric. A megacity vehicle that's sustainable needs to be, because rather than spewing pollution directly at the alveoli of city residents, EVs move the pollution to where the electricity is created, which is typically outside of the city. Problem solved. Kind of. But electric cars have heavy batteries, and in the automotive world, weight traditionally meant inefficiency. So BMW went on a crusade to make the i3 as light as possible, and this became the world's first high-volume, regular production carbon fiber car. It wasn't entirely carbon fiber, though. The I architecture was called Life Drive, and it consisted of two main pieces, the Life module and the Drive module. The Drive module contained the driveline, and it was an aluminum skateboard that held all the mobility bits, a battery integrated into the floor, an electric motor, and the suspension, steering, and brakes. The Life module was the passenger cell made of carbon fiber. It was called the Life module because it contained life, chiefly human life forms. The two modules were glued and bolted together, and then painted exterior bits made mostly out of dent-proof thermoplastic were applied to give the i3 its shape and to keep the elements out. The result was a curb weight as low as 2,850 pounds, which is really impressive for any modern car, especially one with a heavy battery in it. Though it needs to be said, the early cars had a very small battery. At just 22 kilowatt hours, it had an EPA predicted range of only 81 miles. The electric-only range was less of an issue if you shelled out $3,850 for the optional range extender, another brilliant innovation that made the i3 truly different. This is not a plug-in hybrid. And that gas engine was never meant to propel the car regularly. It was only there to get you home if you ran out of juice. And so it's tiny. A 647cc two-cylinder scooter motor hooked up to nothing except a generator. With a tiny 2.4-gallon fuel tank, the Rex, as it was nicknamed, almost doubled the i3's range. The EPA predicted it would go 150 miles before it was out of both electricity and gas. And in megacity mega traffic, covering 150 miles could take a long time. Luckily, the i3's interior was genuinely gorgeous, with BMW boasting of door panels made of hemp and of optional leather that was tanned with the natural extracts of olive leaves, all in the name of sustainability. So long as you don't talk to the cows, am I right? The backseat was super easy to get into thanks to the clamshell doors. I mean, what a cool thing, right? The i3 was impressive in every way on paper. But like that know-it-all college professor who can't function in the real world, it had genuine trouble translating all of those theoretical benefits into practical ones. Let's start with those doors. Easy to get in, sure, but once you're back there, you can't get out unless the person in front of you opens their door. And while you're stuck back there hyperventilating, the windows don't open at all. So all of that fresh air from driving a zero-emissions vehicle through a mega city, you get none of it. All you get is mega claustrophobia. So let's say you enlisted the help of some good Samaritan to open that front door for you. Now you can open the back door and get out. Well, the problem is, if there's another, say, megacity vehicle right next to you, you're stuck in the clam. I can't get out. What was the point of these doors in the first place? Help. The range extender had its problems too. Firstly, the puttering scooter motor didn't exactly sound premium from the outside, but worse, choked down to just 34 horsepower, it didn't develop enough power for extended highway cruising, which, let's face it, is typically when you need the extra range. In order for the California Air Resources Board to classify the i3 as a range-extended EV and not a plug-in hybrid, it had to meet certain criteria. One was that the range extender couldn't kick on until the battery was fully depleted. Another one said that the gasoline-only range had to be equal to or less than the electric range. All of this meant that the early US spec i3s had software that prevented them from using the entire 2.4 gallons of fuel in the tank. It had to ignore the last half a gallon, or else the gasoline range would be further than the electric range. And worse, because the Rex couldn't kick on until the battery was fully depleted, BMW had to delete the hold mode, which was something that allowed the driver to force on the Rex to charge or even just maintain charge, so you had enough capacity to, say, make it up a hill on your way home. As a result, US i3 owners sued BMW in a class action lawsuit alleging that the car put them in dangerous situations when, even with the wrecks running, it couldn't maintain enough battery power, the battery hit a critical limit, cut power, and they suddenly couldn't keep up with traffic. Not a good look. But the i3's compromise that most egregiously failed to deliver a benefit in the real world was actually the carbon fiber. The carbon construction did result in a light car, though it needs to be said that Chevy produced a four-door Spark EV at the same time that used zero carbon fiber and weighed within 100 pounds of the i3, and had more range. So did the larger and heavier Volkswagen e-Golf. That was the bigger issue. The i3 wasn't actually all that efficient. The VW was little more than a regular old Golf with some batteries and a motor, and so it weighed 500 pounds more than the i3. But here's the thing, it was no less efficient. And embarrassingly for BMW, Volkswagen achieved that efficiency without needing to use bicycle tires. These 155 section front tires are narrower than the tires that BMW uses on the back of its own motorcycles. So as you can imagine, handling and braking suffered tremendously. And then to add insult to injury, the i3 rides like an ox cart. Say whatever you want about this car, but it is the antithesis of the ultimate driving machine. I mean, come on, look at that. You can almost touch the rim. I drove 3 i3s in period, a prototype, an early production car, and then a late production car. The last sentence of each of my notes on those cars, an enormous letdown. Not a success, a terrible car. Oh dear. In less vague terms, I just didn't think the i3 met the demands that customers would expect of it. BMW did make several improvements to the i3's ride, handling, and braking, and by the end of the i3's production run, it could finally beat things like a Chevy Spark or a Volkswagen e-Golf in skid pad grip and braking distances. But to do that, its efficiency dropped by some 10%. Fact is, those simple, inexpensive machines were a better compromise. So what was the point of all of that carbon fiber? Well, I doubt very much Herr Dr. Professor and company didn't realize that weight isn't a factor in EV efficiency in the same way that it is in combustion cars' efficiency. So maybe they were all just told to use as much carbon fiber as possible because one of the billionaire kids of the Quandt family, which owns BMW, had just bought a carbon fiber factory in Washington state. Just a guess. Just kidding. I don't know. Just wondering. You figure it out. The physics is simple. When you can recapture the energy used to accelerate a mass, more mass becomes almost irrelevant. It's why the Lucid Air Pure was able to debut as the most efficient vehicle in history, despite weighing 4,600 pounds. One thing the Carbon was great at was adding cost. The small i3's price was a mid-sized fortune, $42,000 at the beginning, 1.5 or twice the price of other small EVs. And fully outfitted, it cost more than a Tesla Model 3 long range, which wasn't a megacity pod, but was a real car with a really long range. Let's ignore for a second that the ideal megacity vehicle had already been invented 150 years earlier. It's called the subway. The problem with the i3 was its price. See, at its inception, the world had 21 megacities, but only 4 of them were in industrialized nations, meaning 17 of the 21 ideal markets for this car couldn't begin to afford one. And so how was anyone supposed to be able to afford Project I's other sustainable transportation device, the i8? This car cost $135,000 to start, $160 by the end of its production run, which means it costs just as much as the Porsche 911 GT3 that was, out the back. The i8's sticker price was shocking, but so too were the options, including this gorgeous fitted luggage set by Louis Vuitton, which BMW thought people would line up to buy at a cost of $26,000. Well, hey, look, at least one person did, right? The paradoxes were alive and well in this car, too. That same lightweight, promising life drive architecture. So aluminum frame and then passenger cell made of carbon. Hey, I hope somebody made their money back. But despite that, the i8 actually weighed 200 pounds more than the Porsche it ate. This despite using the 1.5-liter 3-cylinder from the base Mini Cooper. Here it was hopped up to 228 horsepower, and it was hooked up to what would have been a soul-sucking 6-speed automatic with a torque converter had that automatic not been tuned so incredibly well. What was also tuned incredibly well was the sound. The i8 made the most magnificent noises, almost none of which were real. In fact, you could sometimes see the speaker grill vibrate while it filled the cabin with all means of spotty noises. But the crazy thing was how it sounded on the outside. Crazy, not because it sounds like something like a 911 GT3, but because it could have. See, this car has 2 exhaust pipes. This one is hooked up to the 3-cylinder engine, and this one, you're not even gonna believe me, so I'm just gonna have to show you. Hang on. Ow. This is the left side muffler with a tailpipe. Except it's not actually a muffler, it's a speaker with a wire coming out of it. And you can play anything you want out of this. You can blast Dua Lipa, or you can listen to Randy Popst tracking a 911 GT3 RS. And the sound coming out of this is 119 decibels. It is so full and so loud, it's like having the 911 in the studio with us. I don't know what to make of this, because on the one hand, it's genius. On the other, if you get a think tank of academics together and they think this is what makes for an authentic sports car experience, I'm not okay with that. But the fact that it didn't occur to them to make this car sound like the car that's prolapsing out of the back of it makes me want to burn my college diploma. Purist rhetoric aside, the i8 drives really, really well. It was and is a beautiful, well-constructed grand tourer, and one that looked, seemed, and drove differently from everything else on the road. Up front, where the trunk would be on Porsche 911, there's a 129 horsepower electric motor that works independently of the rear engine and has a battery good for up to 15 miles of range. Left in purely electric mode, the then front-wheel drive i8 rips to 60 miles an hour in 9.4 seconds, scrambling for traction much of the way. Back in the day when I tested the i8 for Road & Track magazine, I clocked a 3.8 second 0 to 60. And while that isn't GT3 quick, it was regular 911 quick. And bonus, it got 28 miles per gallon combined. And that is the single most important thing for supercar buyers. Okay, not really, but why waste? If you ignored the price, the i8 actually became a compelling thing when you combined the speed with the concept car looks. And I truly mean concept car looks. This was never meant to be part of the i-Plan. It was just a concept car to bring attention to the i3. But once people saw it, the reception was so positive that BMW couldn't resist making this beauty. Which is the final indication that if the think tank's big brains were firing on all cylinders, there were sadly only 3 cylinders. Or perhaps the big brains were just incredibly easily distracted. How was any of this supposed to be sustainable? How is the i8 supposed to meet the transportation needs of the future? How was the megacity vehicle going to solve those needs when no one who lived in a megacity could afford a megacity vehicle, thanks to compromises built in that benefited no one except maybe the person who bought the carbon fiber factory? And then, why in the name of God did they design 2 vehicles that are excreting 2 other vehicles? Wait a second, I just got it. i8. Oh my God, all these years took me this long to figure it out. i8. I ate a Porsche. Academics, they're so smart.